I'm an Android developer primarily. I organize the Central Florida Android Developers Group. I attend a lot of hackathons. I'm a hackathon junkie. I probably hit like 4 or 5 a year. And actually, the first time I built a chatbot was at a hackathon. It was the NASA Space Apps Challenge, where we wanted to solve the problem of giving people real scientific articles rather than like fake opinion pieces, things like that. So we built this Twitter bot that people can tweet at and ask for like articles, and it would send them a link to an article that's related to what they're looking for from a curated list of resources. Like it has to be like from NASA or like proven scientific universities and stuff. But that's how I built my first chatbot. So I have 4 goals for this talk. To answer the first 3 questions: what is a chatbot? How to get started with making chatbots? Where does Firebase fit into making a chatbot? And I want to leave you with a sense of curiosity and inspiration to possibly build your own chatbots. And who here uses Slack? Raise your hand for me. About half the room. You're in the right place because this is my revised title screen, building Slack chatbots with Firebase in less than 100 lines of code. So one of the things I want to highlight is that it doesn't take a lot of code to get going, and Firebase really makes it easy and does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. But we'll get into that later. Let's see. So let's answer the first question. What is a chatbot? A chatbot is primarily a program that listens to users and responds to them. And they can be separated into 2 different categories, basic and intelligent chatbots. So a basic chatbot responds to specific commands or requests, and they're as smart as you make them to be. So they don't do anything extra, right? I'm gonna show you a few examples. I'm sure one you probably used is Giphy. If you ever need to express how hungry you are through a motion picture, I'm sure you've used this before. It's very simple. You say /Giphy, the description, and it serves you a GIF based on what you were trying to look for. And it does a pretty good job. Another example is a weather Slack bot. You can get the weather anywhere. Still very simple, but it gives you some precise information. And we have this is not a chatbot, but this is a good segue into dating chatbots though. And Foxy is actually a really good example of this. They're a dating service, but instead of like filling out forms and creating your account, you actually just have a conversation with a chatbot. And it makes the experience more interactive and more interesting and more fun. Onboarding is an area of technology that chatbots can really make a difference in, I think. And this is a good example. Now, if this was the bright side of chatbots and dating app services, then this is the opposite of that. If any of you have gone on like dating apps, you probably swiped on some chatbots that are trying to like get you to click on this link or send them money or have you give them your social security number, things like that. These bots are simple, as in they give the same response. They just wait for your response and they send the same thing. And not all chatbots are good, but let's move on to intelligent chatbots. So most of the intelligent chatbots leverage artificial intelligence, and if they're really good, they'll actually learn more about you and learn how to, I guess, interact better with you. I think a very, very early version of a really good intelligent chatbot is Akinator. Akinator is kind of like a game where he's really good at figuring out a character that you're thinking of. So if I'm thinking about Neon Cat, right? The Pop-Tart cat, rainbows. He'll ask me a series of questions a series of narrowing questions that will get him closest to that character, and he'll actually guess it correctly. I've not beat him yet. But that's the quality of, well, if he ever fails to figure out a character, he'll ask you who that character is, and he'll learn about how to get better at figuring out if it's that character again. So it learns from your interactions and when it fails. Another interesting chatbot that is what we call intelligent is Tay. Now, Tay came out last summer-ish, and basically it was Microsoft's experiment with AI. And basically, Tay can have a conversation with people on Twitter, and she changes and develops a personality based on her conversations. This is a good example of Tay learning the lingo of internet speak, I say, or like slang and stuff. So it's almost like natural language processing and understanding people's what people are saying. Let's see. And this is another example of a chatbot, right? So if you look at the conversation, what's going on, not much great. Like they all sound like real sentences and like you're having a real conversation. This is another example of an intelligent bot that uses and leverages natural language processing and understanding to reply back. And it feels like it's a real conversation. And another good example is just talking to your Google devices, where on an intelligence level, it's probably smarter than you with most of the requests that you give it. That's why you would leverage the tool. So we've gone over what chatbots are, the different types, and some examples. In this section, we're going to talk about great places to start building chatbots. First up is BotKit, which it's open source. It has an IDE called BotKit Studio. It hooks into many chatting platforms like Slack, Facebook Messenger, Twilio, Microsoft Teams, Cisco Spark, things like that. It has support for natural language processing, data storage, and analytics. And it's written with Node.js. Let's see. And there are plenty of options, and you'll probably see a lot of the same features from a lot of these great starting points. Hubot is also open source. It was originally developed by GitHub to do tasks. There's a pretty big community around it, and it's written in CoffeeScript. Next one we're talking about is GoBot. So this is an interesting one in the sense that it has an IoT focus, where a lot of its support plugins and stuff are based around hardware devices like BeagleBone, Arduino, Raspberry Pi. And a lot of the hardware components like GPIO devices, audio devices, like it has a lot of driver support for those. And this is written in Go. So let's not forget about why we're here. We're here to talk about Firebase and how that can help you build chatbots. So to explain Firebase, it's kind of a culmination of many different services that work together really well, like storing data, detecting crashes and sending emails about it, doing back-end work, handling authentication through like OAuth with Facebook or Twitter or whatever else. It has a ton of intelligence features also on the right side, such as predictions, app indexing, analytics. Anyways, it has a ton of features, right? So where does that come into building chatbots, right? Well, let's look at chatbot components. At the most basic level, chatbots send and receive messages, right? And the Firebase service that we're going to, that's going to help us out with that is Firebase Functions. So Firebase Functions, to explain real quick, is that a function is basically a piece of work, right? And the way Firebase Functions work is something triggers it. Usually it's a HTTP request, but sometimes it could be like I have a Firebase database and this table is changed. I need to do some work with functions and then update that value that was changed. So triggers could be from Firebase services or HTTP requests or other things. Now, what I love about Firebase functions is that as an Android programmer who works mostly in the front end, I don't have to worry about configuring a server because Firebase functions is basically a server. It does things like automatic scaling, such as like if your current instance of Firebase functions is doing too much work, it will launch new instances up to meet the demand. To work with functions, it's free and it's really cheap to scale up, at least in my cases anyways. And it's just a really good tool to get a backend set up really quickly. And it does a lot of the heavy lifting. So most of the other time, you'll have to work with storing data. It's very common to build apps and services where you have to store data, and Firebase real-time databases are a good solution for that. Some qualities of it is it follows the NoSQL format. If you come from SQL, it's a little bit different, where it's not really objects, but it's more like lists. It's generally a lot quicker. It's more like a document style storage of things. I'm probably not the best person to explain it, but that's one thing that tripped me up when I started learning it. It provides a really good interface to access your data. You can make HTTP GET requests, and it'll return the data back in JSON format, which makes it really easy. It has a really robust security system where you can change the rules on who can access what data. It has neat features like offline syncing. So let's say your app goes offline and you make changes to your database. Well, once you get internet connection again, it'll automatically push those changes up. You'll probably have to handle some conflict resolution, but it's nice that it has all these nice features that you can leverage. And once again, it takes care of most of the heavy lifting. I don't have to set up a database on a server. I don't even have to worry about servers. It has a nice web interface where I can modify data if I'm debugging or I'm mocking things up. So it's a really good tool for developers to just get right into storing data. So to show you how to make a Slack bot, I'm gonna go over one that I've already built. It's called PointsBot. Basically, this is a bot to acknowledge the efforts of your teammates if they do something awesome with awarding them imaginary internet points. You know, it works for Reddit, so why not? So how does it work, right? You're on Slack, and this works through the Slack / commands. So in this example, /points, I have to hit out award, name the user and the amount of points I want to award. And basically, this is what it would look like. I awarded 100 points to Michael. So let's go behind the curtain and see how this actually works, the implementation details. So the flow is Slack talks to the Firebase function server, which is pretty much your bot. It handles the business logic of it. And the Firebase function server, or your bot, talks to the database to do some work or update something, comes back, and then the bot responds to the chat client. So on the Slack end, this is what configuring it would look like. It's pretty simple. You create a / command for it. The request URL is a HTTP request to the Firebase function server. Yeah. So that's to set up on the Slack end. This is what the Firebase real-time database looks like. It's really simple, basically just the Slack usernames, the points, the teams, things like that. So let's actually look into how the bot is made or how it's implemented. So this is how you initialize all the code. The main point of this is to just point out that it's really easy to connect Firebase functions with its other services, like the database. Very minimal code to do that. So here's the code that I use to receive the message, right? I have an endpoint called PB, and the Slack command will hit this endpoint. The first thing I do is I check if the Slack team ID is valid to access my bot. So it's just some security logic there. Next, I parse out the request message. So I get the user ID, the points, and the actual command. And at the very bottom, I process the award command. So actually, before I go any further, I'm not a JavaScript developer. I might be committing crimes against JavaScript. I don't really know. But I'm doing my best. And so let's move on with process award command, right? This is a lot of functionality that I'm gonna break down. So first, we're gonna talk about get user, right? This will probably have to hit a database to get a cached user and their point values. So this is what the get user function looks like. Hits the user table, gets the property user ID, and the .once is basically, I don't want to have an observer and observe changes. I just want the value now. It gives me a snapshot, which I return back out. Otherwise, show an error. So get user, not a lot of code. So once I get the user, I grab its current point value, I add it to the new point value, and then I try to update that user's points and add points to user. And let's go into that function. It's pretty close to the last one. The only difference is instead of .once, which gets, we call update. Basically, the points property, passing the point val on that, and then I grab the latest value of that property and return that out. Let's see. So I got its point values, I updated its points. Now I need to respond back to Slack, right? And this part of the details is usually unique to whatever chatting platform you're using, whether it's like Twitter or Cisco Spark or whatever. But Slack actually keeps it pretty simple. You just set the response type and the message. And my message is basically username is awarded that many points to that person. Yep. So this sends a response back to Slack. And that should be it, right? Okay. So this is a detail of the Slack API. Sometimes if you take too long to process a command, like it sends out a request, right? It gives you a 3-second window to reply back before it times out. Sometimes, depending on what you're doing with your bot, if you send a reply like this, where it's like, get a value, update it, respond back, it'll probably succeed successfully. But in the cases where you're probably processing a lot of data or like hitting other APIs, you might run into the timeout. And when Slack sends its first request to your Firebase function bot, you'll actually get a response URL. Oh, actually, here's the GIF of how you feel when you're like, it works. No, it doesn't. Anyways, all right, so there are gotchas, right? 3-second timeout window. So the first request that Slack sends to your bot, there's a property called the response URL. And basically, if you need to respond back to that channel or that user's message, you send a request back to that response URL, and it'll send a message to the channel saying, hey, you award this person this many points. And you could do that up to 5 times in 30 minutes. This is specific to Slack's API, once again. But that's pretty much it, really. So to do a small recap, 2 types of Slack bots, basic, intelligent. There's plenty of open source libraries to help you build Slack bots. But if you want to, I don't know, get your hands a little, well, if you want to leverage a lot of, if you want to have a lot of the heavy lifting done for you, I like using Firebase for that because it has a ton of services and libraries and features that help you build Slack bots. Like functions and real-time database, which we covered. These are the resources I've used for my chat, my talk, and thanks for listening. That's my presentation.